everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on TRIGUN Stampede, episode 2. So, I'm really excited about this. We started TRIGUN Stampede last week, and it's been really good so far. I'm really excited because I've watched the OG series, so I know pretty much what happens in that. I've not got the manga yet. It's on its way to start reviewing it. So, but I like so far that what Stampede is doing is it is presenting us with Vash. Vash is kind of like this colossal protagonist. He's just this universal guy that just like you just instantly fall in love with as a main character, and I really love Vash. And so I'm happy that in this iteration compared to the original, Vash is still Vash. Like, his character hasn't changed. He's this colossal protagonist. You just instantly want to follow him around and see what's going on. But there are definitely some differences from the OG series. And so I'm going to be dedicated to doing a spoiler corner and then doing the discussion right after this episode. But I'm going to be honest, a lot of this is probably going to be spoiler corner. So if you've not watched the OG series, I am going to try to like review the episode and give my thoughts about it, thoughts about the stuff that comes out, the lore, whatever, because it does seem to be going a different route and giving us more information than parts of the original series, which is very fun. And then we'll talk about the OG series. I do have a comment that I want to go over, but I want to wait till the spoiler corner for it because it's talking about the OG series as well. But yeah, so far, I'm on board. It's apples and oranges. It's kiwi and dragon fruit. I'm excited to see where it goes, but the animation has been probably the thing that surprises me and makes me happy the most because I heard a lot of people having mixed reviews of it. My brother's kind of like, I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm fine with it. It has a very distinct style, and I'm okay with it. So I'm excited to see where it goes. So we'll see, right? But before we get started, I wanted to give a special shout out to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon. Over on Patreon, I'm super grateful for your support. I don't do monetization on YouTube. I don't do ads and all that garbage because it's just not my style. So I'm very happy that I get support on Patreon to keep doing what I love doing with you all. It's been very, very good. So I want to give a shout out to the philanthropy tier for those that go above and beyond each month to give me extra when they really don't have to. So I'm super grateful to y'all, and especially to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Anna, to Ashy Got Snow Bitches, to Be Happy, to Dana, to Destiny Marie, to Edgar, to Eric, to Kiri, to I'm gonna say your name wrong, but you're new and I love it. It's Loisj? Loicijy, Matthew Palfinier, Nameless Monster, as well as Saku, Shimuyama, Sunspots, Trails, Translucent Men, Tyrone, and Zachiel. Thank you all so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what we get out of this episode. Should be fun. Should be a good time. But yeah, we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to get started here and see what we get with good old episode 2 of Stampede. And we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. That ED is such a tease. They give us that big, beautiful picture of the organ at the end with knives, and you're like, but wait, I want more. And you think it's like a preview, and then it just stops there, and you're like, what is this? So I feel like my discussion that is not spoiler corner is going to be things that I like about the episode. And the things that I don't like about the episode, I think is going to be just relating to the original series, which I don't want to spoil for people if you want to go back and watch it. So I feel like that's where we're going to be at. So I feel like the main discussion is going to be just like, oh, these are the things that I really enjoyed. And then the rest of it, the things that I found that I would change or had issues with are going to be in the spoiler corner. And that's a decision. But it's one that I had to make. So yes. I really like the animation. I was trying to like pick and go through the choreography and the way that Vash moves and the movement and the animation style of this episode. And so far I really like it. I could see why some people would maybe be thrown off about it because it can seem maybe disjointed is not the right word, but I guess the art style is not like, it's not 2D animation, which 2D animation tends to be very fluid, right? Because it's just frames per, it's like just the drawings kind of flow into one another. And here, since it's more CGI elements, it has a more like mechanical quality to it, but they do it really well. I like the animation a lot, and I feel like the colors and the uses of it are all really, really good. When stuff feels sci-fi and it's supposed to feel like cold metallic, it does. And when it's the desert and it's like warm and dry and arid, it does feel like that. So I feel like they get the atmosphere down really right as well. This is just an Attack on Titan spoiler, but Vash and Knives' bowl cut designs remind me of a character named Yelena. So the whole time I see Knives going Vash, all I can picture is a character Yelena being like Vash. And I'm like, it throws me out of it, but that's my own personal prejudice. I like that the way he slowly says it ties exactly to Vash sitting there like it was daydreaming. And we have that. We do get these little robotic nodes that I'm sure are tied to Knives. We get them kind of flittering around from the early start of the episode. I thought at first it was just some random technology, but I should have been thinking, and that it's something that is tied to Knives, like surveillance or something to do with that. But I did not see it attaching to the Nebraska son, Joseph, and blowing him up. I did not see that coming. I do like that it's interesting that Vash is sitting here tinkering without his jacket, tinkering with the gun, right? And meanwhile on the radio, they're talking about without plants, our ancestors would have gone straight to heaven, which is fascinating because we've kind of established that the plants are kind of otherworldly, surreal, maybe having an angelic tie to them, something supernatural, and the idea that without them they would have gone to heaven, which, you know, supernatural. And so it's like it's a funny little like in reference joke that I don't think the guy in the announcers is even understanding that he's making. And so yeah, we have Vash fixing his gun, and he somehow saved the photo of Rim with him and Knives. Was surviving in this hellscape really a stroke of good fortune? So it's like, should we really have been here to begin with, you know? And I like that you have, Vash says that he looks just like him. Knives looks very similar to Vash, but they are not identical. He has paler hair, paler eyes, their eyebrows are different. They do look like different people, which is interesting to me, right? Should we be pitied for our bad luck? And I think that's a really good point to bring up in this episode. Like, should you be pitied for your bad luck? And because they constantly tell Vash in this episode, they're like, man, you really have bad luck. And Vash kind of makes the point of saying, well, I shouldn't be pitied for it because I chose this. I chose to keep going. And that's kind of the deal with humanity. Humanity chooses to survive. It chooses to move forward. So, I mean, despite the seemingly bad luck they're faced with, they really shouldn't be pitied because that's just how it goes, right? That's just part of life. Life can be cruel, but it also can be wonderful too. And you see like the good and the bad. And that's kind of what Vash kind of gets at in this episode by being like, yeah, I kind of have bad luck. I have no shame, no pride, whatever. I'm just helping people because that's what I want to do. Obviously, he seems very influenced by Rim, who is lovingly looking over him and Knives. I'm very curious to see what we get from Knives and why Knives is the way that he is, why he wanted to destroy the humans. I'm hoping that we get some explanation about that. I like the idea of the plants and the red plants and the OP. We see this like angelic Ahsoka from Star Wars looking creature. I want to know what that's about. I want to get more with that. But meanwhile, we go back to the Nebraska family who escaped from Mays City Prison on 69 counts of manslaughter and 12 counts of attempted murder. That's a pretty high record, and the townspeople are like, oh, well, you saved us once. I guess we'll have drinks together at the end. That's a really high criminal count, but then again, here's the thing. Vash has been wanted for all these crimes, and they're like, whatever, we're going to let it go. The story establishes that not everything we hear from the radio, it's fake news. Not everything we hear from the radio about the bounties may necessarily be true. Because with Vash, he's been committed for all these crimes, and not all of them are true. So should we really believe the Nebraska family has all this against them? We don't know for sure, right? We don't know for sure. So that's interesting to me. So yeah, and then we have Meryl and Roberto. trying to get the scoop from Vash of why he's not responsible for these crimes. It's actually his twin brother who looks very similar to him. How convenient. The sad thing is it's true, right? The one thing I will say is Millions Knives is a dumb name. I like Vash the Stampede. Makes sense with his character. Knives is a fine name for villain. It's very villainous. But Millions Knives, it sounds like an Alanis Morissette song that's not been released yet. It's just a weird name. It doesn't, for me, what gets me is you have Vash the Stampede. Why don't you have Knives the blank? You know, have it be somewhat similar since they're twins, but no, Millions Knives is just very interesting. And then, yeah, Roberto's not exactly buying what Vash is dealing out. I do like Vash is kind of like, come on, believe me, I'm really telling the truth. I'm telling the truth, man. And he's in a corner. This little kid, Tonus, I do like that Roberto, before we get to the little kid, he's like, why is Knives doing this? Is it about money? Is it about honor? Is it about revenge? Well, no, not really. I guess revenge would be the closest for Knives because he doesn't seem to like humanity, but we don't know enough about it yet to really know exactly what Knives' motivation is. And Vash is just kind of like, I mean, I feel like Vash can't really go into details about it with them without spilling everything about the Seeds project, and that doesn't seem to be something that we're ready for at this point in the story. So yeah, we get Tonus with his little worm basket, this little creepy kid with his worms. I'm like, go away. I do agree, Rosa. She's been like, get out of the restaurant. Nobody wants to see your worms, your dragonfly looking stuff. I do like the little detail that Meryl's scared of them. She's like, ew, no. And then Jophseph is kind of scared of them at the end, which is funny. But it also makes sense that Rosa wants to get her kid out of the diner because then they're all going to fire the guns at him, right? The running man. The animation style with Vash running is really good. I do like the movement. I like the choreography. It looks really good. I like that Meryl drops down a noose to get Vash back up on the ceiling. And I like the little subtle detail of Vash like lifting his legs up on the ceiling so that they don't see them from there. Like he's so tall, he has to do that. That was a nice little detail. But yeah, I mean, the idea is that even though he saved their town and everything, their town is still really in hard times. The plant's not working. They need it to survive. They established that again with the radio segment at the beginning of this. And so they are willing to get the bounty on Vash because it's the only thing they know what to do. And Vash seems very understanding of that. He's like, no, I get it. What can you do? Then we meet the Nebraska family, which is the dad that looks like the mad scientist and Jophseph the son, who's this biological creation that has had all these like manipulations. I like that the dad has like, it looks like the top half of his head has been like screwed on and it doesn't match the bottom half. It's very interesting. And he's just firing, like pointing this bazooka at this guy driving the tank that looks like he could not be bothered anymore. I do like that they call out how ridiculous the wanted poster looks. I like that the Nebraska father calls it out first and then Vash is like, why'd they pick that picture? They didn't get my good side. I love that that's the one they chose, which is kind of a tongue-in-cheek moment. Vash in this series reminds me a bit like Luffy from One Piece with his attitude. He just has this casual, carefree attitude, and he's just like, eh. And Meryl's like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, what this is what you're worried about? The photo that was used? What? But yeah. So he's like, it seems like Vash just wants to get out of here. But he doesn't seem like he's ready to leave the town until the Nebraska people show up. And then he's like, okay, then I need to go to keep them from trying to get the plant. Right? I don't know if Rosa is pregnant or if she's just a bigger woman. I can't decide because I feel like, and this isn't really spoiling anything because they're minor characters. I feel like in the original she was pregnant and that was part of the situation with her. But in this one, I'm like, if she's pregnant, that baby is like, it's like Brianna's baby at the Super Bowl. It's just like getting thrown around everywhere. And that baby's going to have the most dexterity out of any baby living. Because I'm like, how are you not injured? And how are you throwing yourself into danger when you have a child. So either she's just heavier set and that's just her character, but I'm like, if you're pregnant, she runs into to go after the Nebraska dad. I'm like, you're with child. Think of the baby. Like, send somebody else in to go after him. Like, what? And I'm like, I'm surprised that baby's okay. I would be a little bit concerned, but maybe she's not pregnant and that's just her body type and there's nothing wrong with that. So, of course, Vash understands, like, he understands why they're doing the things that they're doing, and he still saves her and her son from getting hurt because that's just how Vash is. Vash is just like that. He just saves people and he doesn't expect anything in return. It's almost as if he feels guilty for, part of his character feels like he's guilty that they got stuck on this planet, and it's kind of because of Knives and him, and they got stuck on this planet, and so he feels like he owes it to them to, like, save them or try to help them in any way he can. And that's just his personality, is helping people and being kind. And that's just Vash's character. And he's like, what's wrong with being timid and kind? Why is that viewed as a bad thing? Because the Nebraska dad, keeps talking about fighting and strength this entire episode. And Vash is like, well, strength is not always fighting. It's, you know, helping people and being, you know, determined and having perseverance and all of these other things that get tied into it. It's not necessarily that you can fight people and use a gun just because you have it, right? So I like the mechanics throughout this. The one part of them going out in the desert and then coming back did seem a bit like a wild goose chase, but it makes sense in the long run that Vash was trying to keep them from fighting the plant. It just didn't work out in the end. And then what's interesting is Meryl kind of calls him out, thinking that he's clever for running away and that it's a good thing. And she's like, it's really lame. Like, it's not an act of kindness. You're just running away from pain. And there's a part of me that's like, well, Meryl, you don't exactly know Vash's entire story, so maybe you shouldn't say that because you don't know his whole deal. But then it's like, running away from pain does not solve it, right? You do need to address it. And I feel like we don't know for certain yet if Vash is running towards Knives or running away from Knives. And I think that at this point we think he's running from Knives, which is not solving the problem, but we don't know for sure yet. So it feels like Meryl says that a little prematurely. I'm like, well, maybe wait and see for sure if that's really the case, but okay, sure. And even Roberto kind of calls her out on it, saying, you know, like, we don't exactly know his story. And Vash is like, look, he's like, I know I'm timid. He's like, and I get that, but he's like, is there anything wrong with that? Is it such a terrible thing? Is that such a bad thing, even if it gets someone killed? Like, you know, he definitely has some guilt that he feels for it, but anyway, so then we go back to the plant and everything. We still don't know about the red plant. They're still keeping that close to the vest, but Joffsef and them, like, take off with the good plant, or try to. I like that he has a little bow tie. It's ridiculous. I love it. But then they all fight him for it, and they manage to save the town. They managed to save the plant, thankfully. I kept thinking the plant was going to fall. And then Vash, of course, not only saves the plant, but he also saves Joffsef and gets the others to help as well. And it's kind of like that kindness is infecting, you know? It's just him being kind and saving others encourages others to do the same. And then they end up doing that. I still don't understand the little robots. I want to know more about it. And I do like when there's that little... I'm glad that they didn't make it a bait and switch, because when Joffsef is falling and the Nebraska father's trying to help him and Rosa was going to fire the gun at him and not help Joffsef, I like that the scientist, the dad, was like, that's my son. And she connects with him in that moment and is like, oh, I have a kid. I know exactly how you feel. We can connect this way. And so that's what encourages her to save him. And I'm glad it wasn't a bait and switch. I'm glad he didn't be like, oh, save my son because he's all I got. And then when they did save him, I'm glad he didn't turn tail on her and, like, try to hurt her, because that would make, like, it be a very cynical outcome. And I'm glad that that's not what ended up happening. I'm like, good deal. So yeah, they end up saving them. And then she's like, drinks all around. I'm with the Nebraska dad being like, it seems too early in the day to drink, but whatever. I love that Meryl calls him a weirdo, calls Vash a weirdo, because he kind of is, but a lovable weirdo. He's your weirdo, right? And so then they're all just sitting together, and it's really cute. I like that. I like that everybody is like just having a good old time. Meryl's getting tipsy, and then that's when Vash decides to make his leave. Like everything looks like it's working out great. Decides to go, and then we see the little robots all going into the diner, which I didn't realize that's what they were doing. I didn't realize they were going into the diner until it was too late. And then Roberto like goes out to smoke and stops Vash. And he's like, "Who are you running from? Is it Knives?" So at this point, it seems like Vash is running from Knives rather than confronting him, which is what Meryl kind of is somewhat, without realizing it, encouraging him to do so. So it's like, okay, encouraging him to face him, right? And then these weird little spidery things that I swear I've seen in another anime, they all get on Joseph and he runs out and they blow up. So there's that. Seemed like they were getting attached to his technology. It seemed like that was the case. And that's what they were attaching to the technology. And then is the technology, because they're all going at the technology and like getting a hold of him. Is it run by plants? We don't know. But they're also attaching to his skin, which is creepy as hell. Ugh. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. So yeah, I did not foresee the sun blowing up. I guess we're going to deal with that next episode. Sure. What do we do with that? I have things I want to talk about in the spoiler corner though, obviously, so. It was a good episode. It was very, very episodic, which this isn't really a spoiler, but a lot of the OG series are like single episodes that they have a through line, but they're very standalone. So you could just randomly watch them and not be totally off base or totally out of the loop. And this felt very much like it as well. So I do want to talk about some things in the spoiler corner, but if you're not sticking around for that, I hope you enjoyed this reaction and discussion. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. But in the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll talk to y'all next week with episode 3 of Trigun Stampede. So, well, real quick before we start out this in the spoiler corner, Cisco Kid 1214 had said this back in the OG series, and I wanted to bring it up here. There's a town called LR Town in the original series in episode 24, and they were saying that it could stand for long rifle. The 22 1R to be specific, which ties the type of gun that is and type of bullets ties to the 22 caliber bullet that Vash was looking for in episode 1 of Stampede to fire in his gun. And I was like, haha, nice call, nice catch. I'm glad you've discovered that. So I'm like, that made a lot of sense. So thank you, Cisco Kid, for calling that out. I feel like I definitely am intrigued by this series. I want to know where it's going to go because it is doing things differently. And I'm very curious about Knives' whole Shakespearean villain plot in this. I'm very curious to see how they take things from the OG and move them around. But I feel like I'm going to be a naysayer because I really like the original series so much. And I feel like I'm going to be one of those people that's like, but why is this one doing it this way? And why is it doing that way? And so I don't want to try to be too negative, but there were some issues I had with this episode that I was like, okay. Because they are taking things from the original series and kind of just either abridging them or glossing over them or changing them. I am curious about the fact that Joseph blew up. I was like, what? I am curious to know like what these little robot spider things are like and what are they attached to and all of that. I still don't know how I feel about revealing Rim and Knives from early on. I'm still torn about why we did that, but I feel like with the whole plant situation, it's probably for that reason, and I've just got to wait and see what they end up doing with it. And I'm fine with that. That's okay. I'm okay with that. And the whole Knives thing. I like that the Knives transition into Vash's dream works. I like Vash in this version. Don't get me wrong. He very much has the same kind of goofy fun that Vash did in the OG series. What is missing for me at this point is that Vash in the original series, you immediately got the impression that he was this like mature, wizened character that was deep down very serious, but putting on the facade of being kooky and over the top. And it was all a facade. And you kind of got that within the first couple episodes. You're like, yeah, he's a lot more serious than we think he is. But this Vash in this series is much more innocent and much more youthful. Like the Vash in the OG series, you felt like he was 100 years old. You felt like he was wizened and hardened, but he was putting on the goofy facade and trying to remain optimistic and positive despite everything he had witnessed. This Vash doesn't have that hardened, wizened edge. He feels very innocent and very naive. And he still feels the optimistic vibe that Vash has, but he just feels more youthful about it. He doesn't feel like he's 100 years old at all. He feels like he's like 25. So I'm curious to see if we're going to get more of that hardened personality come out. And maybe when Wolfwood comes, it will appear more, because I felt like in the OG series, once Wolfwood showed up, then that side of Vash came out more and more. So right now, I'm not going to judge him too much. He just seems like so young and youthful in comparison, right? Just seems like that's the case, which is fine. It's okay. The Nebraska family, I feel like I'm not... say the Nebraska family in the OG series is very hammy, very over the top, very goofy. The son is like 500 feet tall. It doesn't make sense. And so I do appreciate they try to make this more realistic, being like the son is not like a 500-foot tall Godzilla and you're like, but how did this happen? Like there's not like that question of realism with the son. It's just, oh, he's been experimented on, augmented, and this is how he got that way. That part's fine. I like that. I think that makes more sense. It's okay. They try to give Jopseth more of a personality than the OG series, which I'm all about. They gave him a storyline. He saves the plant. He's influenced by Vash. I'm all about that. The dad is what I kind of have a little issue with, because all he does the entire episode is repeat the same like generic phrase like fight, might is right, and power is truth, and power is justice, and you have to be strong. It's like he's just trying to hammer in the theme of the story and make sure, like, did you not forget what the theme of the episode is? And it's like, I'm not saying it feels like it's dumbing it down for us, but the thing about the original Trigun is that they didn't make things very obvious. It was just, you get the theme and you could think about it and critically analyze it and go, oh, here's this. This feels more like, make sure you don't forget what the theme of the story is for today's episode, is kind of just the vibe that the Nebraska father gives off up until the very end. And I was kind of like, it felt like the show was talking down to me. And I'm like, I'm smart enough to figure out what the theme is. Thank you, show, for making sure we get that. It just felt very TikTok generation is what it felt like. I felt like an old lady on my lawn going, I get it, you know? And now at the end of the episode, I liked that the Nebraska father was sitting down having a drink and like mumbling and grumbling. It was fine. I guess it's like pick your poison, because in the original, the dad was very hammy, over the top villain, very cheesy. And I could see why people would think that's lame, not want it. And here, he wasn't like hammy and cheesy like that. But some of the animation, he was like, oh my gosh. Like some of it, I was like, I wanted to roll my eyes a little bit and be like, oh, okay, that's a little cringeworthy. But I didn't, because, you know, some people haven't seen the original. But I just feel like I like hammy where it's just like quirky and weird. But when it's like over the top and kind of childish, I'm like, eh. And this felt kind of childish with his character in this episode. So I was like, eh. I'm still not on the fence. I'm on the fence about Roberto. He's okay, and I like what he does in this episode. I'm just like, you're discount Wolfwood. I'm waiting for Wolfwood to come, and then you're going to be obsolete, Roberto. Then you're not going to matter, because Wolfwood's going to do essentially whatever your role is. That's what I don't like about Roberto's character. I want to like Roberto, but all I can think of in the back of my head is like, once Wolfwood shows up, what is your point going to be? Are we going to have two Wolfwood, basically? What I liked about Millie's character was Millie was her own standalone character that was different from Meryl, different from Wolfwood, was actually more like Vash than anything else, but in a more grounded sense. So I'm really curious to know like what they're going to do with Roberto once Wolfwood shows up, because I think it's just going to be two of the same character, and I'm like, I don't know how that's going to work. And if we don't get Millie, I will be kind of sad, because I'm like, no. Meryl's character's fine. She gets a little bit more sassy in this episode, but I do like with Meryl's character that she is at least like questioning Vash and she's not enamored with Vash and doesn't realize it, kind of like she is in the OG series at times. She is questioning him and trying to figure him out. I do like that she's not instantly like over the moon with his character. She is questioning him, calling him a weirdo and stuff. I like that about Meryl. I think that works pretty good. And again, Vash is very goofy in this episode, which is fine, but I'm hoping we see more of that serious, wizened character as we go, because that's what I really liked about Vash in the OG series. But we shall see, right? And you see a hint of it when his like head's on the table and Roberto's asking like, what is Knives' end game? And it's like, well, he wants revenge on humanity for sure, but I'm going to be curious to see what we get out of that specifically. I do like the choreography. I like the animation throughout this. I like the interaction between Meryl and Roberto and Vash. The Nebraska family, I can't complain too much about the Nebraska family because they're cheesy and over the top in the original series, which is fine. But here, like I said, the dad character is just kind of one note and really one note. And I was kind of like, okay, come on, give me something else, right? I do like the townspeople here and how they all come together to save Joffsef at the end. I really liked that. I thought that was a great choice. I thought, Vash influencing the town to save Joffsef and the plant at the end. I thought that was good. It seems like they instantly changed their tune from wanting to, I'm like, as soon as they're done with drinks, are they going to point their guns at Vash again? Which is that? I don't know. That'll be interesting to see it go down. But the one thing that was interesting that I was very curious about was when Vash then went out into the desert after trying to lead Joffsef and the Nebraska dad away, and Meryl kind of gives Vash the lecture about being timid. And I'm glad that Roberto stopped her, although again, Roberto's kind of mansplaining a little bit, and I'm like, eh. But one thing I hope this series does not do is in Trigun, Vash's whole dilemma in the OG series is that he wants to be a peacekeeper, he wants to be a pacifist, and he has to come to terms with, well, what can I do and can't I do in this situation? And how do I get by with advocating peace and love in a world where that's very hard to do so? And so what I liked is that the show never compromised Vash's integrity and his mission up until the very end when he's tested at his greatest, and he only does it one time, and that's when he's pushed to his brink. And what I'm hoping is that we don't get like a Zack Snyder-esque. That's what I'm hoping we don't get. I hope we don't get like, and what I mean by that is like Zack Snyder is a director, and he took like the Superman franchise and made it dark and gritty, and like Superman was kind of like Vash. He's like, truth and love, peace and love, and all justice, and I'll save you no matter what. And Zack Snyder kind of was like, but what if Superman had to kill people? And it's like, what? It's like, that's kind of the antithesis of his entire character. And so I just hope this series does not go that route and make Vash like that, because that's kind of the whole point of Vash. That's like his entire character story. Of how you are a pacifist in a world that is very anti-pacifism and anti-peace. So I'm giving the show the benefit of the doubt, but it almost seems like, and I get that Meryl kind of has a Wolfwood vibe to her in this episode, being like, well, why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that? And Vash is like, well, because that's not my mission. So I don't know. I'm gonna give this show the benefit of the doubt. The thing of it is, the season's only 12 episodes. So I'm curious to know like how far we get into, maybe the reason they did the storyline with Rim and them first is because they knew they weren't going to get to it in these 12 episodes, because you don't find it out in the OG series till like episode 17. So maybe they were like, we know we're not going to get to it in this series, the first season, so we need to go ahead and tell it so that people are invested, and that way we can keep going from there. Like I said, I'm interested to know where Roberto's character is going to go once Wolfwood shows up. We can't have two smoking, wizened men who are cynical of the world. We can't have two of them on screen. Roberto's going to die or something, I guess. I don't know. We can't have that. And then I'm curious to see like how because this episode is pretty much like episode 5, I think, was around the time. Episode 5 was around the time we met the Nebraska family. This episode's kind of reminiscent of it in a way. So I'm very curious to see like what other plot lines from the OG series we see kind of reimagined in this world. That's going to be very interesting. But I'm very curious. What's keeping me invested is that I want to see what they do with knives, especially since we've revealed him from the start. If we get Legato, how Wolfwood is in this series, what they do with the plants, because that seems to be the biggest deviation from the original, is that we're getting more with the plant lore. So that part's going to be intriguing. This episode was all about establishing Vash's character and his philosophy and who he is as a person and his mission. That's kind of what this was establishing, and that he doesn't stick around. He does his little, he saves the day and then he moves on, kind of like just this nameless hero. And so I'm very curious to see where that goes and what they do with the lore of the plants and with the new characters we could possibly meet, how they tie in, if they change things from the OG series, what those changes are like. Like I said, we're out of spoiler corner now, but like I said, there are good and bad changes that come from the original. And I think, again, it depends on which version you've seen first. And that will impact how you react to changes made from either version. So I'm still invested. I'm still excited. This episode looked gorgeous. The OP and Edie are so not dated, but they are. And I feel like that's true of the original series too. I feel if you watch the original Trigun, the OP and Edie are very dated. They feel 90s. This feels like 2020s. So, which is fun, right? Which is a fun time. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens next episode, especially now that Jovsev has blown up. Is the Nebraska dad going to flip his lid and like start attacking the town again? Is he going to be like mourning his son and run away? Are they going to have a funeral for Jovsev? Is he going to be okay? Jovsev looks like he's augmented, so maybe he'll be fine. I don't know. I'm very curious to find out now what's happening. So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below, but I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'm going to be back next week with episode 3 of Trigun Stampede. Bye!